Recently at our center in Toronto, a scholar mentioned that it is not shirk to say that the Ahlul Bayt are the names of Allah, because in reality they are not saying they are Allah, for it is understood that Allah is not His names. The Ahlul Bayt ﷺ are simply a start of the manifestation of Allah's attributes, like Al-Hayy, and that Allah takes ownership of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we refer to Him as Al-Hayy, that is a recognition of the fact that He is the ever-living, and physical death does not come upon Him. Whereas Allah says, Innaka mayyitun. O Prophet, you will most certainly undergo physical death. So how someone whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to as an entity that will undergo physical death, how such an entity can be a manifestation of Allah who is ever living and who never undergoes death is a doubtful claim. And then he gives reference to Qur'an Surah 8 verse 17. وَمَا رَمَيْتَ إِذْ رَمَيْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. You did not throw, O Messenger, when you threw, but it was Allah who threw. So yes, Allah takes ownership here, but before this, Allah takes similar ownership for the actions of the Sahaba. And He says, فَلَمْ تَقْتُلُوهُمْ. You did not kill the disbelievers and the polytheists. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ قَتَلَهُمْ. But Allah was the one who killed them. So does this mean just because Allah has taken ownership of the actions of the Sahaba, now we should start saying that the Sahaba are the names of Allah and they manifest the attributes of Allah, and all this irfani talk, would you also apply it to the Sahaba? This statement that the Ahlul Bayt are the names of Allah, this is a statement that's found in a narration in Al-Kafi from Abu Abdullah alayhi salam fi qawlillah, regarding the statement of Allah, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. Allah's are the most beautiful names, so call upon Him with them. Qala, allegedly the Imam said, نَحْنُ وَاللَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. We are by Allah the Asma'ul Husna, the most beautiful names. The first thing to notice here is that Shaykh al-Kulayni himself isn't too sure about this narration. You can see this from the fact that he has placed it in Babun Nawadir. Babun Nawadir means the section on odd, strange narrations. If Shaykh al-Kulayni really had faith in this narration, then why does he not add it in Kitabud Dua? Given how this narration is talking about the etiquettes of dua, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا, you would expect Shaykh al-Kulayni to include it in Kitabud Dua. But when there is a narration that is dubious, in which Shaykh al-Kulayni arguably himself isn't too sure about, but he has found it in a hadith notebook of some early companion, then in such a case, instead of just throwing it out, he has a special section called Babun Nawadir, chapter on odd narrations, and he will just catalog it there. And so Shaykh al-Kulayni's Babun Nawadir, you could equate it with his version of the recycle bin. You can see this is Sahih al-Kafi. If you come to a section where you would encounter this narration if it had been authentic, Babu Ma'ani al-Asma, the bab before Babun Nawadir, and then straight away after this bab you have Babul Bada. So the entire Babun Nawadir between Babu Ma'ani al-Asma and Babul Bada, al-Bahbudi has thrown it out. Not just the narration of the Ahlul Bayt saying we are the Asma'ul Husna, but the entire bab. The chain of this narration is so hopeless that even Al-Allama Muhammad Baqir Al-Majlisi, despite the fact that he's an akhbari with an extremely weak methodology, but even with his weak methodology, you can see the fourth narration is majhulun. And to put things in perspective, this is the same Al-Majlisi when it comes to the narration that says in Al-Qur'an alladhi ja'a bihi Jibreel ila Muhammadin 17,000 ayah, that the Qur'an which Jibreel had brought had 17,000 verses in it. He says this report is sahih. وَلَا يَخْفَى أَنَّ هَذَا الْخَبَرِ. There is no doubt that this report and several other authentic reports are explicit in talking about the reduction of the Qur'an. And then he goes on to say these riwayat are not just sahih, they are mutawatir. Yet the chain of this narration is so hopeless that even he gets it right. Another marji' and mujtahid who has looked into this narration, Ayatullah Abul Fadl ibn al-Rida al-Burqu'i al-Qummi, in both his books he gives commentary and he dismisses this as an anti-Quranic fabrication of the ghulat, which Imam Sadiq alayhi salam would never have uttered. You know, finding these kinds of narrations does not increase us in anything but iman, trust in the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Do you know why? Because they informed us about this. Subhanallah. They informed us about this from Hisham ibn al-Hakam, that he heard As-Sadiq saying, كان المغيرة بن سعيد يتعمد الكذب على أبي. He says, indeed, Mughira ibn Sa'id used to deliberately lie against my father, Imam al-Baqir, and he used to try and gain possession of the hadith books of the companions of Imam al-Baqir. These are books which have a hadith of Ahlul Bayt recorded by by their most trustworthy companions. What would Mughira do with these books? Listen carefully. فَكَانَ يَدُسُّ فِيهَا الْكُفْرَ وَالزَّنْدَقَةَ وَيُسْنِدُهَا إِلَى أَبِي. So he used to inject secretly all sorts of fabricated hadith which promote kufr, wazzandaqa, and heresy, blasphemy into the books of my father's companions. وَيُسْنِدُهَا إِلَى أَبِي. And then he would join them with sanad, with chains going up to my father. ثُمَّ يَدْفَعُهَا إِلَى أَصْحَابِهِ. Then he would return the books to his agents. وَيَأْمُرُهُمْ أَنْ يَبُثُّوهَا. And he would instruct them to spread them Shia. And subhanallah, this was Al-Imam As-Sadiq telling us that you should expect to find kufr and shirk and blasphemy in the hadith notebooks of the companions of Imam al-Baqir. And all these books, Al-Kafi, Bihar al-Anwar, entire Shia library. Where did the authors get their hadith from? From the hadith notebooks of the companions of Imam al-Baqir and other Imams. Remember the words of As-Sadiq alayhi salam, فَكَانَ يَدُسُّ فِيهَا الْكُفْرَ وَالزَّنْدَقَ. And this is whose testimony? Imam As-Sadiq. His grandson, Al-Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, when he looked at the books of the companions of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, وَكَذَلِكَ أَصْحَابُ أَبِي الْخَطَّابِ يَدُسُّونَ هَذِهِ الْأَحَادِيثِ إِلَى يَوْمِنَا هَذَا. He says that the companions of Abu al-Khattab, they are continuing to secretly inject these fabricated ahadith إِلَى يَوْمِنَا هَذَا, to this very day, فِي كُتُبِ أَصْحَابِ أَبِي عَبْدِ اللَّهِ, in the books of the companions of Abu Abdullah. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, in his time, he was testifying that they are adding ahadith to the books of the companions of Imam al-Baqir. Now Imam al-Rida is testifying that this hadith fabrication process is still going on. To this very day, Imam al-Rida says they are adding fabricated narrations into the books of the companions of Abu Abdullah. فَلَا تَقْبَلُوا عَلَيْنَا خِلَافَ الْقُرْآنِ. So he appeals to the Shia and he says, so please never ever accept anything attributed to us that goes against the Qur'an. So because both our Imams, both of them testified that the hadith notebooks, they have fallen into the hands of ghulat who have injected all sorts of poison, kufr, zandaqa, shirk. So beware, even if the sanad was flawlessly the most trustworthy companions, we would still not be intimidated by this narration. Why? Because the Imams of Ahlul Bayt themselves told us that where have the ghulat injected blasphemy and kufr? Fi kutubi ashabi Abi Abdullah, in the hadith notebooks of the companions of Abu Abdullah. In their hadith notebooks, the source books are what have been targeted by the ghulat. So this is why it doesn't matter how trustworthy an asl or early hadith notebook is, and doesn't matter who its transmitters are, whether they are trustworthy or not, as long as the claim that they are bringing does not match with the Quran, without any questions asked, we throw it out. Abdullah bin Abi Ya'fur asks the Imam, hadith is brought to us by people, some of them we trust, some of them we don't trust. What should we do? Imam al-Sadiq ignores the whole trustworthy aspect. He says, إِذَا وَرَدَ عَلَيْكُمْ حَدِيثٌ فَوَجَدْتُمْ لَهُ شَاهِدًا مِّن كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. If a hadith comes to you and you are able to find a shahid, a witness which can serve as proof for the claim of that hadith, if you can find the witness for it in the book of Allah or in a statement of the Prophet which you already know to be true with certainty, then take it and accept it. The companion explicitly asks, we have some narrations that are brought to us by trustworthy people, some by untrustworthy. What should we do? Intuitively, we would think the Imam would say, simple. Whichever narrations are brought to you by a trustworthy companion, accept it. And whichever narration is brought to you by an unreliable narrator, reject it. But the Imam knew, first of all, that trustworthiness of a narrator is useless now because the ghulat targeted the books of the most trustworthy companion. Most of you, majlis going people, do not have access to the encyclopedias of Rijal, and that's not a problem. Trustworthiness of a narrator is useless now because the ghulat targeted the books of the most trustworthy companions. So my dear brothers and sisters, when we take this golden rule that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has taught us, we take this narration in Al-Kafi which is claiming that Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, Nahnu wallahi al-Asma'ul Husna, we, I swear by Allah, are the most beautiful names of Allah. Let's take this to the quote of the Qur'an. What does the Qur'an tell us about Al-Asma'ul Husna? The concept of Al-Asma'ul Husna, this terminology is mentioned 4 times in the Qur'an. The first time is mentioned, Lillahi al-Asma'ul Husna fad'uhu biha. Allah's are the most beautiful names, so call him with those beautiful names. Yani his most beautiful names are those names with which we are supposed to fad'uhu biha. You are supposed to call Allah with those names. If these names were the Ahlul Bayt, then every dua that Allah has taught us in the Qur'an should have followed this formula. Allah should have taught us in the Qur'an then, in all the du'as that He teaches us, to call upon Him by calling upon the Ahlul Bayt or by invoking their names. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Our sustaining, nurturing Lord, grant us the good of this world and the good of the hereafter. In this dua that Allah has custom made, does he follow that understanding that's been given to you in Al-Kafi? Kafi is saying Asma'ul Husna are Ahlul Bayt. So when you invoke Allah, you should invoke the Ahlul Bayt, that means. But here Allah is teaching us to say Rabbana. He's teaching us to invoke Him by His beautiful name and attribute of Rabb, which means nurturing and sustaining Lord. So isn't this custom-made dua then violating and going against the understanding that that narration in Al-Kafi is giving you? We go to the next appearance of Asma'ul Husna in the Qur'an. قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوا فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Say, call Him as Allah or call Him as Ar-Rahman. أَيَّمَّا تَدْعُوا. With whichever of these names you call upon me, فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Mine, Allah says, His are the most beautiful names. So from this verse, what insight do you get that when Allah talks about Asma'ul Husna, He's giving you examples, names like Allah and names like Ar-Rahman. Now you try to compare the narration of Al-Kafi with this. Narration of Al-Kafi is saying, نَحْنُ اللَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. So we, the Ahlul Bayt, are the names of Allah. So the names of Allah in the Quran are Allah and Rahman. The Imam is saying, we are the names of Allah. What does that mean? We are Allah and we are Rahman? Because look, the Hadith is trying to establish a direct equivalence. By Allah, we are the most beautiful names. And the Ahlul Bayt, na'udhu billah, if we believe this narration, they are saying, we are these names. We are Allah, we are Ar-Rahman, we are Ar-Rahim, we are Al-Malik, Al-Quddus. He's not saying we are some of the beautiful names. He doesn't say we are manifestations of Allah's beautiful names. That would be a different statement. Not even those who accept this hadith are willing to accept it for what it actually is saying. The statement is, we are the most beautiful names. So basically, if you're going to justify this statement by twisting it and turning it, then you can rescue any blasphemous statement. Even the statement of the Christians, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا, they are indeed kafir. Those who say, إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. Those who say that Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary. That statement is also exactly on the pattern of this narration, in direct subject-predicate relationship. But if you do gymnastics of the kind they do with this narration, then you can even rescue this and say there is no kufr in it. Why? Because you say, no, what the Christians mean is that Allah has manifested His greatness through Isa ibn Maryam. So the meaning of Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary. We do ta'wili gymnastics of the kind they do with narrations, and we can change the meaning of any statement and make it from kufr, you can make it into something iman that you can then also verify from the Quran. Because if you change the meaning of Inna Allah huwa al-Masih ibn Maryam to mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifested His power and His signs through Isa ibn Maryam, well, this interpretation we can verify from the Quran itself. But on the basis of this, can we justify the statement Inna Allah huwa al-Masih ibn Maryam? Does this give us the permission and authority and justification to say that, well, because Isa alayhi salam is one of the signs of God, therefore we can establish a direct equation relationship, and we can say Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary. Just as this narration in Al-Kafi tries to argue for the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. That's why those who do accept it, they try to twist the meaning by trying to add things which, if we were to add to the blasphemous statement of the Christians, we could also rescue that. Even if, let's say, a Christian brings me a fabricated statement from Isa alayhi salam saying, I am God. With this kind of ta'wil that they're applying on the narration on Al-Kafi, I can even rescue this narration. I can say, yeah, Isa alayhi salam may have said this, but with the meaning that I am God, as in I am a manifestation of God. I am a reflection of God. I radiate the greatness of God. But this is all nonsense. Isa alayhi salam never play games like this with the teachings of the religion. The ma qultu lahum, oh Allah, I never said anything to them illa ma amartani bi, except what you ordered me and instructed me to tell them. An i'budullaha rabbi wa rabbakum. Worship Allah, my nurturing sustainer and your nurturing sustainer. And that's why even the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, if they're called and summoned by Allah, they will also testify that they never taught this kind of blasphemy. This is the kufr and zandaqa that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam mentioned, which the ghulat added into the hadith notebooks, because the riwayah doesn't say that we are the manifestations, the signs, or we are the guides to Allah. No. That riwayah, obviously the ghali who was inventing it was not interested in these extrapolations, that they are manifestations of Allah or they are guides to Allah. He was not interested in, he is interested in establishing a direct equivalence between the Ahlul Bayt and the names of Allah, so that you should be able to say that yes, the Ahlul Bayt are Allah, because Allah is one of the Asma'ul Husna, and the Ahlul Bayt are the Asma'ul Husna. This is why the Imams of Ahlul Bayt cursed them so much, and this is what the ghulat wanted to do. They wanted to steal all of Allah's divine beautiful names and attributes and give them to the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. They wanted to steal the divine offices, powers, functions. Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illa huwa alimul ghaybi wa shahadati huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. It is He, Allah, apart from whom there is no ilah. Alimul ghaybi wa shahada, the knower of the unseen and the seen. Huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. He is the all-merciful, the especially merciful. Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu. Al-Malikul Quddus. Al-Malik, the sovereign one, king of all kings. Al-Quddus, the holy one. As-Salam, the giver of peace. Al-Mu'min Al-Mu'min, the giver of security. Al-Muhaymin, the all-dominating. Al-Aziz, the almighty. Al-Jabbar, the one who holds all swaying powers. Al-Mutakabbir, the only one whom pride befits. Subhanallah amma yushrikun. Exalted is Allah above what they associate with Him. Huwa Allahul Khaliqul Bari'ul Musawwiru lahul Asma'ul Husna. He is Allah. He is Al-Khaliq. He is the creator. He is Al-Bari, the originator. Al-Musawwir, He is the one who designs. Huwa Allahul Khaliqul Bari'ul Musawwiru lahul Asma'ul Husna. His are the most beautiful names. يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض. Everything in the heavens and the earth glorify and recites His praises. وهو العزيز الحكيم. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. Do you see any mention of any angel or any prophet or messenger or any Ahlul Bayt? له الأسماء الحسنى. His are the most beautiful names. Far be it from Imam Sadiq to try and na'udhu billah reach for the beautiful names of Allah which Allah uses to describe Himself and say we are these names. Remember the words of As-Sadiq, وَكَانَ يَدُسُّ فِيهَا الْكُفْرَ وَالزَّنْدَقَ. They have injected kufr, disbelief in Allah, and zandaqa, blasphemy, heresy, things which if you believe will take you into very deep misguidance. فَلَا تَقْبَلُوا عَلَيْنَا خِلَافَ الْقُرْآنِ. So please never ever accept anything attributed to us that goes against the Qur'an. In order to protect ourselves from the misguidance, we need to strengthen our connection with the Qur'an. مَنْ قَرَأَ الْقُرْآنَ وَهُوَ شَابٌ. Whoever frequently recites the Qur'an in a young age, Imam says the Qur'an will become mixed with your flesh and your blood. وَكَانَ حَجِيزًا لَهُ مِنَ النَّارِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. And it will act as a barrier between you and the fire of hell.